Well, welcome everyone to another Coach Video Tip. My name is Dan Foster. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Building Champions, and I'm also an Executive Coach. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Executive Coach Annette Pellinat. Annette, welcome. It's great to be with you again.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here too, Dan.
Oh, wonderful. Well, in this week's Coach Video Tip, we're talking about how to effectively lead in a hybrid work environment. And Annette, I know that this is one of those topics that seems to keep rising to the top, whether we're in a group coaching session or whether we're hosting a roundtable with leaders or just simply doing research on what are hot topics out there for leaders. This one seems to keep rising to the top. So I'm super excited to learn from you today about how you're working with your clients and some of the best practices on how to lead well in this environment.
Yeah, it is definitely a hot topic.
Mm-hmm.
And it emerged from a really negative situation. And
Yes.
people are probably so tired of thinking about the pandemic and COVID. We're post-pandemic, which is really awesome, but
Yeah.
that didn't happen, and it really changed the way that we work.
Didn't
And
it?
so, yeah, I read something, somebody called it the world's biggest workplace experiment ever,
Yes.
right? And it really was.
Yes. It really was.
It was March 20th, 2020.
Yeah.
Everyone was asked to go home, or a lot of people were.
Yes.
And we had, really no preparation for that, no training. Some of us didn't even have the technology. But
Yes.
at the end of the day, or the end of the 2-year period of time where we
Yeah.
were shut down, we found that people were able to be successful and productive, and some people even more productive,
Yeah.
working in that remote, more flexible environment. So it's
Yeah.
worthy of thinking about going forward. How can we work differently and really learn from those from that experiment?
Yeah, it's so true. And I love that idea that it really was an experiment and it was forced upon us, but still it was great to see the adaptive nature of humans and of leaders to figure it out. It's a challenge. We've never had something like this before. And we're still, like you said, working through it. But it truly was amazing to see that leaders, teams, and organizations they could get through this. I remember us sending extra monitors out to people and cameras out to people and all this
Mhm.
stuff that is like, this is a new way of doing business. And so well, that's a great start for us, really kind of
Yeah.
looking back of where we came from. And now where do we find ourselves now? And that, like, what is kind of what's happening out there with leaders and employees now, now that we've come through sort of the pandemic?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people are at a choice point,
Mm,
organizations and leaders and employees as well.
yeah.
So we know that this is possible. We know that there's some benefits. And we also know that some organizations are going to want people to come back and work and be co-located, and that's fine. That's a choice.
Yes.
There's also a choice to lean into something different and more flexible. And there's a lot of benefits both to the organization as well as individuals. So
Yes.
I think we're just really at a point where people feel like they're in choice, and that's a good thing.
It
And
is.
we can learn from what worked and what didn't work.
Yeah, exactly. Well, tell us some things that you're seeing when you're talking to your clients where people are really doing well in this environment. Like what are leaders doing? What are employees doing that's causing it to be a positive right now
Yeah,
in it?
yeah. Yeah, so from an employee standpoint, I think a lot of people are just thriving. They're thriving because they're feeling a greater sense of autonomy and freedom. There's obviously so much more flexibility. There's ability to balance things more evenly,
Yeah.
not having to fight a long commute to get into an office.
Yes.
You can start your day and end
Yep.
your day in a comfortable way. There's many benefits of that. And then from the leader's perspective, having a highly engaged workforce, having people being able to deliver at a great extent. Like I referred to information. I'm not going to quote statistics at this point, but
Yeah.
there's reports that say that people were largely as effective, if not more productive
Amazing.
in
Yeah.
this
Amazing.
environment. So why not, take advantage of that? And then also being able to use flexibility as a way to retain great talent and
Mhm.
attract talent. And you don't have to look right in your backyard, right? Or
Yes.
relocate people if you're willing to have a more virtual work
Yeah.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I remember when this all started happening, a number of the leaders that I was coaching or talking to, that was their biggest concern was productivity. And would people stay engaged? Would they be productive? And it was a huge question mark. And so I think what I'm hearing you say is that actually we're starting to see reports that are telling us that people actually did okay. And if not, they were even more productive than they were before.
Yeah. I think though it takes intentionality
Yeah.
and paying attention to what's really happening. So there are some challenges in this environment
Sure.
as we can imagine. So I
Yeah.
can share those with you
Let's
now.
do that. Yeah. Because I
Yeah.
know there's productivity seemed to have been like an old concern. What are some other concerns
Yeah.
and challenges that are
Yeah.
starting to surface now?
Yeah. So I'll take it from, again, from the leader perspective and then from the employee perspective.
Perfect.
So from a leadership perspective, people are concerned about engagement with the corporate culture,
Yes.
what the company stands for, alignment with the values and things of that nature, keeping people engaged in that way, which is, as we know, so critically important.
Yes.
And also being able to have a beat on employee well-being, right? Because if you
Mhm.
don't see people, you're not passing them in the hallway.
Yes.
How do you know that
Yes.
everyone's tracking okay? And then from the employee standpoint, similar, there are challenges around, potentially being isolated. So
Mhm.
I'm sitting in my home office and I'm not, just having the opportunity to engage with people spontaneously like I used to.
Yeah. I
Um,
missed that part.
yeah, I do too sometimes. And we found ways around that, I think.
Yeah.
But also, there's a potential I talked about that work-life balance. There's a potential for that to get out of skew.
Yeah.
So if I'm sitting here concentrating and really into what I'm doing, sitting in front of my laptop, it could be 10 o'clock at night and I've
Yes.
forgotten,
Yeah.
okay, there's not a boundary there. So
Yeah.
really keeping things bounded, having appropriate boundaries around work
Yes.
and personal life.
I find that I struggle with this too. Like even just this weekend,
Yeah.
there was I had a couple hours where it was just me in the house, and I walked by my office and I saw my desk there, and I was like, "Oh, I could go get online real quick,
Right.
answer a few emails that I didn't get to on Friday," and I did it. And then I
Yeah.
had this like nagging, like, or not a nagging, it was a good voice in my head saying, "You don't need to
Yeah.
be doing this right now, like go." And so
Yeah.
it's just so easy because our offices now are in our homes. So
It's really tempting.
yeah,
So again, being intentional and really paying attention to what we're doing, because you
yeah,
can get into trouble just carrying your phone around because that's always there,
yes,
right? Your
yes.
email and text and everything. The other big thing that also needs to be intentional is how do we collaborate? How do we connect? How do we come together
Yes,
and be creative, right?
yes,
I think all of those things can be accomplished, but we absolutely need to acknowledge that this is real for people.
it is. Yeah. So let's talk about some of those best practices then. If
Mhm.
those are the concerns and the challenges, what are some things that you're coaching your clients on and the organizations that you work with to address those concerns?
Yeah. Yeah. So I like to kind of look at it in three buckets.
Okay.
The first being relationship and connection, and then
Mhm.
the culture, and then the third being technology. I'm not a tech person, but I have learned to love it.
Yeah.
So from the relationship standpoint, sort of best practices is finding ways to meet in person. And
Yes.
uh, we do this at Building Champions. We come together a couple of times a year where everyone comes together.
Yep.
Some companies do it monthly. It
Ah,
depends on your situation, but
sure.
just acknowledging that you can't trade off that in-person
Can't.
contact, the having dinner together,
Yep.
hanging out together at breaks, whatever the case may
Yep.
be. It really does a lot to build trust, build connection, and enable that once you're back in your home office or wherever you're at.
Yes.
So
Uh-huh.
coming together in person, and then increasing the contact, the one-on-one contact virtually. So making sure you have those one-on-ones And when you're in those one-on-ones, checking in on the employees' well-being, getting a
Yes.
sense of how they're doing.
Yep.
And also, what support do you need to accomplish your objectives? What support do you need to hit those goals? So we're ensuring that we keep that productivity up.
Yes.
So that is just a couple of things I think that people do that are
Yeah.
best practices in relationship building.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Love that. I remember when we all got together at Building Champions, and one of the things that I loved about when we were together, it was in winter time and we had that ice storm, right? And
right.
we
Yes.
we built memories there. We were
Yeah.
trying to get people to the airport. You had
Yeah.
time in cars with people. We had, this time where we were stuck in the hotel together. We couldn't go out. And we made the most of it. And it
Yeah.
was so fun. There was one night where people were playing the piano and singing in the lobby, and we were doing dinners together. And so, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's that part of leadership and teamwork and engagement that we've missed so much. We've got to find space to be able to do that. So,
Yeah.
what else do you have for us?
Yeah. And I remember that summit and it was awesome. The other thing is the concern around connecting to culture and the values.
Yeah.
And this is really great leaders. And again, Building Champions, it's done so well, is really talking about what's important in this organization, talking about what we stand for, and really helping people connect to the values and making it a part of your regular meeting cadence to intentionally revisit the vision or some element of the culture that you want people to be connected to. And that's pretty simple, but again, you have to be intentional about it and you have to think about it. And then the last thing is technology. Again, I'm not a techie, but I'm loving Teams, I'm loving chat, I'm loving, Slack. There's many different platforms. I think for leaders, it's modeling the way. So I know I've had Building Champions leaders spontaneously reach out to me, just, hey, how you doing on Teams?
Yeah.
And that gives me permission then to reach out to people spontaneously, sort of that fly by the office in the
yes, exactly.
co-located environment. It's a version of that. And then when you are having virtual meetings, which we do frequently, right?
Yes.
Cameras on culture is really, it's important. So leaders really need to engage with their employees to encourage them, because there's you can't do without that face-to-face. You can't really connect without that. So
amen. Yeah, I think you're so right. And the energy just changes in the virtual room when people have their cameras on and you're seeing a smiling face and you're seeing a response to a question, and it allows you to dig in as a leader. If you're like, ooh, hey, I saw that maybe bothered you a little bit, or you were concerned there, let's talk about it, and you can actually just engage a little bit better. And so I love it, that tip around everybody's got to have their camera on. So important.
Right.
Good.
Yeah. And then using the little icons when you're responding to somebody, in a group.
Yes, exactly.
It's all good. But I guess I would say, just like the overarching message is, be curious, be intentional, and really try to create a sense of awareness of where do you need to plug in with people, because you could miss opportunities if you're not paying attention.
Absolutely. And for a number of us, I think this hybrid work environment is here to stay for at least the foreseeable future. So we've got to learn to adapt as leaders and do these best practices that you've mentioned so that we can adapt and lead really well. This has been great. Thank you so much for sharing these best practices, sharing kind of where things are at right now with the hybrid work environment. And so, folks, if you're watching today and you want to know more about coaching with Annette, you can check out our website and look for her bio, or you can connect with her on LinkedIn. And so, Annette, thank you again.
Thank you, Dan.
So wonderful to talk with you. And I love your expertise on these areas of leadership. So looking forward to our next conversation.
Me too. Me as well.
All right. Yeah. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you soon.